online. Oh, got it.
Sorry.
All good. Okay, so yeah, this is a Netflix pitch workshop. We're just going to go through this and go over some of the key points that this contains. So Netflix essentials. These are things that you want to have in your pitch that are like absolutely necessary. It should be character driven. So the viewer should develop the relationship with the character and not the plot. Right, character driven. And their engagement is related to the character and their understanding of their motivations. If the character isn't interesting, then it's not going to matter to the viewer whether or not the character achieves their goals in the end. The other thing is tease them at the start. The audience subconsciously decides whether they will watch your show in 5 seconds. So a good teaser will give the audience a taste of who the character is, the central conflict, and the world. This is also really important for your pitch deck, not just for like the plot of your show, because you want to grab the viewer's attention like immediately and show them what you got like right from the start. The narrative should have a drive, and that doesn't mean it has to be moving quickly. It just means that there has to be a flow to it, and the hero should be proactive in trying to obtain their goal. We don't want like a Bella Swan kind of character who pretty much doesn't do anything and is just like reacting to other people doing other things.
Or Forrest Gump.
Yeah, yeah, too. And each scene should move the emotional arc or plot forward. That's really important. So we don't want to have just filler. Leave them hanging. Plot cliffhangers are usually, it says here, dramatic events or plot twists. Emotional cliffhangers are revelations to the hero that have an impact on their emotional arc. Sometimes the reveal can be only to the viewer and not the hero, but they need to be compelling enough to drive the viewer's interest into the next episode. Moving on. So this is introduction to how to create a pitch document, which should be about 5 to 10 pages. This is like, think of this as the bread and butter, the actual content that you're going to use to drop into your pitch deck. It's like the meat, So story questions, overview, world, tone, character description, season summaries, potential episodes. And we're going to go over these one by one. So step 1, you want to have the story questions. These are like the central questions that your character and story revolve around. And the answer to these questions will be the dramatic pillars of the entire series or film. So, some examples: what do they want? Why do they want it? Central conflicts, what are the stakes, the themes? We want to have these established early on. The overview includes a short synopsis and why this series. This is important because even though I said earlier that pitch decks are meant to be sort of viewed on the person's own time, you want to grab their interest in the beginning and at least give them a brief idea of what they're looking at. Yes, Paulo.
Yeah, I'd like to add too. So coming from like the overview viewpoint, so this is I think the slides are almost a little specific to Netflix, which is okay. I would say also it depends on who you're pitching to and what kind of presentation you have. It'll all depend on when it says short synopsis. Sometimes it's never going to be like that. For example, I know this is ancient, so bear with me, take it with a grain of salt. If you know Avatar: The Last Airbender, the pitch story is that it took about 2 hours to pitch the whole thing, and it amounted to, because it's a whole animated show and you have to take into consideration world and synopsis and what it's kind of about. So it really depends on what kind of scope you're building. So like as a small starter, you might have a short synopsis, because that's what most people start with. If I'm, I wouldn't start with like a whole high fantasy, right? But later on, if you're more risque and we're gonna develop into something more, that your synopsis might not be as it's not going to be short. And so the whole basis is that depending on what kind of scope it is for the overview section, at least, it's important to keep in mind if you don't want to make a whole entire like huge series arc and then just have a short synopsis, right? You would want to have, because they always want to know exactly what happens. And then in terms of the why this series, it's kind of just hooking them on the basic ideas of what like if the character is interesting enough. So like Hannah mentioned before, you should focus on character because you have to have the audience at least relate to you. So I just wanted to comment on the fact that short synopsis will probably be like the start when you're pitching, but later on, if you are feeling more, when you feel more, I think, comfortable with that sort of thing, short synopsis might not exist at that point, and you'd be pitching movies that are long or series that are long that Netflix or other places want to pick up for longer. So there's that.
Yeah, that was a really good point. Yeah, I mean, you want to be able to summarize what you're saying pretty concisely, but at the same time, your story is obviously, if hopefully, it's going to warrant more than just a sentence or two, and you should definitely include that so people know what they're in for. Moving right along, the synopsis, your synopsis should have the following: who the hero is, what they want, why now, and what happens if they don't get what they want, and what is the central conflict. So when you're writing your synopsis, always be thinking of including these three elements and incorporating that into something that is digestible and impactful. Keep it short. I think they're really going for like an elevator pitch type of thing here, just in the beginning. So at this point in the deck, like in your very first slide, you wouldn't want to have like the backstory and the character dynamics. So just one paragraph if you can, just for this beginning segment. I don't know what slide number I'm on. I have to zoom out. Okay, cool. Step 2, the overview. So why this series? So here you want to expand on the why. Why should people watch this? Why should anyone even look at your pitch deck? What makes the story fresh? Are there any relevant hotbed issues being explored? Is it personal? And tell us more about the themes. If you don't give people a reason to watch, they're not going to watch. And if you don't give your executive or whoever you're pitching to a reason to pay attention to your project and throw money at it, then they are not going to throw money at it. Yes. And then step 3, tell us about your world. So this is where you're really going to get into like the backstory and the world building. So location, point in time, and what is the profession. So what your hero does for a living. So their role in the world also fits into this section here. I love this image. Step 4, tell us about your tone. So you want to convey the feeling or atmosphere that the audience should feel when they watch the series, and it should be really intentional. Your tone should be something that inherently amplifies the story and adds to it. It can't just be random. So your tone usually matches the emotional resonance of your themes. Thanks, little obvious. Revenge equals dark, love equals light. Okay. Talk about potential camera and shooting styles. This definitely fits into your tone because a lot of feeling is conveyed through the visual style. And then, feel free to use movie, television, and pictorial references to help communicate your vision. A lot of pitch decks contain like a looks like this and feels like this type of slides where you would drop in stuff from other already existing pieces of media that you want to not recreate, but like draw inspiration from, and also to help viewers get a sense of what kind of content they're going to be watching. Paulo.
Yeah, something I see a lot that is like really successful nowadays is that you kind of have like dramatic tone shifts like in every show now. Like my favorite show, for example, on Netflix, which was BoJack Horseman, has like that sort of thing. Has anyone seen that? It kind of starts intentionally. Its tone is supposed to be like raunchy adult humor before it transitions into more like adult retrospective. And so I think a lot of shows kind of look for, when you talk about why this series, I think a lot of series they want to have audiences hooked, right? Because they want to have them keep tuning in. So I think having that, if you're feeling like you can match that energy, you should totally try to see if you can fit that in, because that seems to be like a really common thing nowadays, where you watch a show that you think is going somewhere, but it's not. Same thing with like Invincible. I think everyone has I'm mentioning too many animated places. I gotta think of something else. Squid Game.
WandaVision.
I'm sorry, what'd you mention?
WandaVision.
WandaVision, that's correct too. Yeah, it kind of goes from, you know, how like sitcom. It goes from different types of sitcoms, so it's more lighthearted to like more deep rooted
Action.
yeah, more deep rooted
Marvel.
dark Marvel, which is interesting, but that's what kept people coming back. So I think a lot of places like Netflix are looking for that now, which might stir some weirdness because some people don't feel like they want to do that. But if you can, it's a kind of a balance you gotta have. So I definitely think we can get more into that. I think you'll go more into that.
Yeah, and
Oh,
that's a nice testament to like pitching stuff that you want to do versus stuff that you know will get picked up and like trying to walk that line. Sabine, I'm
Just-
sorry, I think I cut you off.
I was also gonna say, can you pitch stuff that also mixes tones as well? Like on a similar note, like instead of starting out one mood and then going to another mood, it's like mixing two moods at the same time, like dark and comedy and like having,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of creative freedom there.
Like I was just thinking Sex Education is not a dark comedy, but what else is a dark comedy show that's now? Oh, Rick and Morty is kind of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like genre mashups that you could definitely play around with that are interesting to watch and compelling and engaging overall. So yeah, tone should not be understated. That's like a central aspect of any creative process. Moving right along, step 5, if you want to tell about your characters should be fleshed out. They should have a backstory, traits, and arcs. They should change throughout the course of your film or show. If they remain static, then what's the point? You know, if they're the same going in as they are coming out, unless that's the whole point. Maybe the point is that your character doesn't change, and that's, you know, you can make a statement about that. But whatever it is, it needs to be intentional. The arc needs to be intentional. It needs to be tied to the backstory and their traits, and obviously to the plot. Okay, so that brings us to this crazy looking sheet that is meant to help you write characters. Making root-worthy characters, I guess, is what it's titled. I'm just going to quickly go over this because it's a lot, but you know, you want to have a goal. There's a distinction between writing characters for film versus series. This slide is also available. I think we sent it out in an email. So if you are part of the F3 newsletter, you also have this available to you to look at on your own time. And I highly recommend it because it's very informative. Key ingredients for a good character: catalyst. They have to have an underlying motivation or backstory. And that can be like a call to action, inherent altruism, you know, wanting to do good, or personal tragedy, my favorite. Moral compass, guiding principles or code. So you want to give your character parameters to work in: protecting and avenging, uncovering truth, fighting for the greater good. Transformation, obstacles and challenges that spur growth, like difficult choice and sacrifice, learning to control skills / power, overcoming hardship. So, you know, little checklist on the side, tick off those boxes. This is really, really important, especially because, as he said in the beginning, they want character-driven things.
I'm just gonna step in super quick. Oh, my camera's not
Oh.
on. To give like kind of a summary for that, you just need to make sure you really, oh, not the chili on my t-shirt. Oops. But anyways, you have to know the psychology of your character really well. Like if you were to be your character's therapist, you would have to be able to write down a therapy session with your character. You have to know the groundwork so that whatever they do in the future, even if it is a plot twist, it should still make sense because it can really turn off your audience. For example, season 7 of Game of Thrones, if your character's whole arc is like destroyed by an action that nobody would have expected. I mean, that's debatable, but the majority of people didn't like Daenerys change in the end because it didn't fit the groundwork and the root work like that this kind of thing says of that character, because it didn't make sense to what people were expecting her to become, even though she did become cold slowly. But yeah, you just have to make sure your character makes sense, like that they feel like a real rounded person and they're not just doing random stuff for the drama of it. People really like now people really like relatability in a character, and they like to be able to feel like it's a real person that they're watching, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's someone that's three-dimensional and that you feel connected to. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for saying that. Relationship dynamics. What is their relationship to the hero? So this, I believe, is referring to characters that are not your main protagonist. So yeah, what's the relationship with the hero? If it's an ensemble, tell us how do they compete against each other? Characters going for the same goal but for different motivations makes conflict, which is great drama. This is interesting too because while this sheet back here, um, I think we were talking about it a lot in terms of like building your main character, but you want to make sure that your every character you introduce should be fleshed out, should feel like a real person, should have the same this should have the same checklist filled out as you would for your main character. Obviously the story is going to focus on just like one or two, but any side characters you introduce should be fleshed out in the same way. Did you?
Oh, yeah, I agreed in accordance. I find it interesting that a lot of people also nowadays, if you've noticed, it seems like side characters are more highlighted. If anyone's ever, I think everyone's noticing now.
Yeah.
So you can really take that to the next level when it comes to writing, and when you start creating more characters, that inevitably you might have a character that seems more interesting than who you had in mind, but that shouldn't like make you feel like that you should focus entirely on them. If like you have a second season, for example, because the main hook when you have like relationship dynamics and having those side characters is that you give information piece by piece. Because I see sometimes some shows after when you pitched and they like that character and then they say, can you go more into that character? And then you just give them too much. And then you kind of lose what initially was important to viewers, was that sort of mystique and also like rarity to see them and how they interacted with your main character. So I think it's interesting how side characters have changed to for the better, I think, about how they become more centralized now.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really that's a good observation. I really like that trend. Sabine.
I was also gonna say, like I said in the chat, on the moral compass thing, the character I don't think has to necessarily have maybe don't have a defined moral compass, but the character needs to be consistent, because some of the main characters, I mean, at least in my opinion, some compelling main characters lack moral compass, or cognitive empathy, or not cognitive empathy, and lack emotional empathy or inhibition. Like, I was thinking Joe Goldberg from You kind of I mean, has a moral compass a little, but lacks empathy lacks empathy in some areas and lacks the moral compass in some areas.
Yeah, good point. I haven't seen that show, but I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, like also a movie equivalent would be Patrick Bateman from American Psycho,
Sure.
or Joaquin Phoenix's Joker.
Yeah, we love a morally ambiguous character. I mean, Jack Sparrow, most interesting part of the Pirates trilogy, or however many movies there are now. Okay. Ensemble strategies. Oh, this is fun. So start the series with your main characters in order of importance. Breaking Bad didn't become an ensemble until the second season. That's important. Choose a character to be the eyes and ears of the audience. You want the viewers to have someone they feel that they can connect to that represents their sort of perspective and look into this world that you're introducing. Someone to ask the stupid questions or is the expert so we can get informed about the world. Don't feel pressure to introduce all the characters at once. You have time. It's a series. I would argue that this applies to films as well. I mean, this
Yeah.
whole pitch workshop is obviously about series because it's a Netflix series pitch workshop. But same for film. Yeah. Did you have something to say about that, Paula?
No, I was just gonna say I agree with film as well. It's just same sort of strategy. You wouldn't start the film with like I was saying like Star Wars. You wouldn't start the film with like Chewbacca or something. I love that guy, but you wouldn't start with him. I wouldn't be interested at that point.
I like what Joey said in the chat. Is this so much a pitch deck as a short storytelling class? I know this Netflix pitch deck thing has a lot about writing. I'm like,
This is not how to do a pitch deck. This is how to make sure that your story has bones. That
it's more of like a story Bible. Like they're teaching how to
yeah,
make a story Bible. But I think it makes sense because a lot of these things are elements that you would want to include in your pitch deck.
They're overlooked, I think.
no, I'm not saying that you don't want to include a lot of it, but it's this is so prescriptive, and not just saying like, hey, make sure that you let us know what's happening here or whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's quite in depth.
More focused on like, hey, you've never written a script before. Here's what you should do.
Yeah, Netflix thinks that we're all stupid, so that's what's happening. You know.
The thing about that is that's a testament to nowadays and how you can find a lot of shovelware and stuff on sites and other things too, if you've noticed. I mean, that's why sometimes when we go to class, they literally keep hammering it.
Yeah.
Because you can still see films that omit all these things and no one ever remembers those. You can spend all the money you want, but if nothing's interesting, then they're never going to pick it up for a second season or they're never going to like make a sequel out of it. So it's awful to think like Netflix might think that, oh man, like you guys don't forget this stuff. And you're like, well, why would I forget this? But like, I feel like the people above us who are in Hollywood and stuff are literally.
To be fair, Netflix itself puts out a ton of trash.
Yeah, they put a lot of shovelware in, right?
Yeah.
But then they don't. Sometimes they either don't renew it or they go the complete opposite direction and just kind of keep renewing it because everyone thinks it's popular. So there you go. That's kind of the whole debate about it.
If it's cheap enough to make.
Yeah. If it's cheap, you make it, right? But too pessimistic. I guess I think there is something about pitch decks that have to have this sort of thing because most people might not even remember, or they can, when you're forming a new pitch or something, maybe you will forget. So I think these things can be very resourceful to help.
I would say that if you're going to take away something from this that is like the one thing that really necessarily applies to pitch decks and not just storytelling in general, it's like the visual aspect of this. Pitch decks should look like this. I mean, obviously the style is going to depend on what kind of story you're telling, but like the how polished it is, and how interesting it is to look at, how organized the information is. This is definitely something to shoot for. Yes. Step 6. Moving right along. Season summaries. You want to include a summary of the character's journey from beginning to end using the major emotional plot points. They suggest doing a season summary for each of the main characters. I definitely stand by that, which can range from a page to a page and a half. And I think at this point, I'm going to let Fernanda jump in.
Should I share my own screen or do you want to just keep scrolling?
If it's easier for you, you can definitely do that.
Well, I have it open. I can't. Oh, I'll just go off there and then I'll just let you know if it's like still on for a while.
Yeah, just let me know when you're ready to go to the next one.
I was also gonna mention really quick, just it's easy to compare our stuff and like feel offended by the trash that networks put out, but there is a purity that we have still as beginners and like just barely studying this stuff, because right now a lot of the things we do are not for profit, and then we're gonna be like really like if we think it's bad now, once we have like actual career in these things, like we're gonna see just how effed up it is that we have a creative career that we want to make really awesome stuff with, and then we're gonna be reminded that these people want money. And like for He's All That was, I mean, we all know it was a cash grab and stuff like that for Netflix, and it's hard, it's hard to like not like remember that we're gonna be thrown into that kind of thing. And I mean, hopefully we will still stay pure in a way, and we can better it. I don't know if it's gonna get better. Capitalism, late stage capitalism. I don't know how this whole thing's gonna pan out in the future. But anyways, moving along, we can skip this one because then it goes into it in a bit. Or Hannah. Okay. So this is a season map. It basically shows that not only do you have to think of acts within your single episodes, but your whole season has to like be a story within itself. So it's like a little stories and a big story. I think we all kind of know this. I mean, for TV shows, you have to have more than just kind of like one storyline. There has to be kind of multiple things happening, parallel stories. If you have well fleshed out side characters, you want to also have like make sure that everything kind of like in harmony is moving along together. And then this just quickly points out that yeah, your it's gonna say that again later in a later slide, but your pilot episode's gonna be the most important one because it's gonna be what's gonna make determine whether someone wants to keep watching the show or not. I know most of us don't like to watch those shows where like our friend really try to get us to watch it and we're like, but it's so boring. And then they're like, if you get through the first 3 seasons, then it gets really good. And it's like, I don't really want to watch 3 seasons of TV for it to later get good. I mean, there could be great payoff, but that's already like a big chunk of people that will not continue watching your show because it was kind of trash at first. So make sure the beginning is really well thought out if you want people to keep watching. So I think this just basically says again what we were kind of talking about earlier, that it says modern writers have adapted structure models to define character development and storylines. So I feel like some stories can be plot driven or like story world driven, where what's happening in the world is what's changing the character. But a lot of people now seem to be more interested in really, really, really well-rounded characters. Like we were all talking about BoJack Horseman earlier. Like BoJack is such a complex character, and all the episodes go like later episodes go really, really, really deep into him. Like why is he that way? Like even the littlest things, like what his mother's trauma was, like when she got her well, this applies if you watch the show. I'm sorry if you didn't watch the show, you might not get the references, but maybe you can kind of like contextualize it. But like his mom got scarlet fever and they burned her baby doll, and then she kind of like that getting a baby torn from her was very traumatic from her. And it's just like it was really psychologically fleshed out, where people want to see that now. They don't want like a really boring character that doesn't feel real or makes decisions just based on their world, and then you don't even know what their traumas were or what their past was, you know. Okay. Sorry, Hannah, I gave you like a second job even though you're done. Um this is kind of, I think they created like a hero's journey V kind of structure. I think we all kind of know it. Like you need to know what their needs are, what their motivation is. You have to make them fail before they even get to it. You have to make them suffer. You can't just give them what they need so quickly. I mean, that's what makes the story is the struggle of getting there. And yeah. And I think the second slide is just basically the same thing too, except it gives you examples. So again, your pilot episode is the most important one. You have to really show your audience who's the hero, what they want, what their central conflict is, what are their key relationship dynamics, and then the basic world rules of the world. So you really want to world build too. You want to know, like it says, the basic rules of the world, like what kind of world is this? What kinds of things can happen? Like again, referencing BoJack Horseman, like it's an animal human hybrid kind of world. There's a lot of puns, like they were expecting lots of puns and a lot of comedy in the show. That's funny, okay. The characters can be really like messed up. It's going to really dive into their traumas, okay. Like you just really want the audience to know what they're in for so they can see whether it's the kind of TV they want to watch or not, and you can attract the audience that you want so that you can have a loyal audience who's going to keep watching the rest of your seasons. And this just shows like an example of like how you would flesh it out, like as an actual writer in your writer's room. I don't think you'd include this in a pitch deck.
I mean, you can have fun with pinning stuff. I think pinning stuff is fun. But I mean, I don't think it was an accident that they have this kind of diagram. A lot of stories, if you're working with a team at least as well, it's very common to do this because it's very quick. You can get points across very easily, and then you start developing between what kind of is the causality. I think another good example when let's say when you're pitching is you should explain to them how, if you're doing, let's say, a series, I'll go into film after. If you're doing a series, you should tell them exactly how the structure is going to go. Like, if it's a serialized thing, the character is going to have to find out or change in some way every episode. Or if it's an episodic thing, tell them the structure of exactly this happens because this happens, therefore this happens, therefore this happens. That's kind of like the South Park thing I took away when I had attended at something about South Park storytelling. Those are the two ways you can try to do that stuff in series. So when you pitch it, you can tell them like, oh, it resets because this character does this. And so it is, that's more of like focused on like, if you're doing more episodic. And if you're doing serialized, well, obviously it's kind of more similar to film in which a story progresses. And I think it's really fun when you pitch, let's say a film, well, I'm going to transition to film a little bit. When you're doing something similar to pitching like a film, when structure is something you want to delve into, you don't always have to, this is a risky thing to say, you don't always have to follow a hero's journey because hero's journey is like, you know, the central glue that holds a lot of characters and that we look up to. But there's also other ways to progress a character or not progress the character, but show something else about, that's where it goes to themes, right? And that's when earlier when you mentioned themes when pitching, structure can flow into theme in which the character starts here and tries to change, but then they end up at the same place they're feeling, even though they got exactly what they wanted. That's like a theme about you get what you want, but at what cost, you know, that's like kind of a sort of thing. So you can always do that stuff and play with structure when you're pitching so that someone who might not be familiar with those types of stories can be fooled and think, oh, that's really original. I like to pick up this idea. And then there you go, you get your thing there. So I think having something like this, and also what Fernando was mentioning about series as well, when you want to define the structure of what it is, you want to define, does the character go places? And that way they will sort of find it. That's where you get your hook, you know, and you know, other things go into that too, but that's besides the point. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Yeah. So I kind of missed a lot of like in the beginning. So like it is Netflix, it's like I'm like in Netflix. So like is it more about K-dramas and stuff like that? Like are we like talking about K-dramas?
Oh no, this is just a whole pitching deck. So the whole point is that this is for you to take away from about how to set up a pitch if you're in the future going to pitch to a producer or someone from Netflix or any other streaming platform to present a series or film so that they can pick it up, the kind of the essential tools and tips that you would need to do that stuff. So, and I think you have those slides that you can send them out.
Yeah.
Right? So you can send them to you.
Because I know like in for Netflix they have like K-dramas. So like what do you guys think about like K-dramas in Netflix? And like for example like the Squid Game that's very popular nowadays. And I think those movies are turning into a big episode. Like for me, like it's cool, but like it doesn't make sense how the storyline goes.
It's an interesting question. I guess if I'm going to relate it to pitching, I think what you mean is that like, so a lot of Netflix shows, a lot of streaming services now are kind of picking up international shows because those scenes are becoming bigger. And you might think, well, those shows don't really follow the conventions of uh, the narrative that at least the US or our kind of audience are picking up. I think that's a different system in terms of who it depends you're pitching it to. So like, because there's different regions that Netflix has, like they have Netflix Japan and they have different films and different series that they have. So it's possible that they have one in Korea in which they have that sort of thing, and maybe Netflix US thought it was interesting, and they bring it over to have it in the US to have streaming. So I don't know if I'm touching on that what you're saying, but yeah. So it really depends where I guess I should also. I guess this is kind of going off off trail for what Fernando was talking about, but I guess the whole point is that if you're pitching, it'll also depend who you're talking to, and it'll depend on what kind of maybe sort of brands they're into, because like you were mentioning before, why are there so many K-dramas? Well, I'm sure Netflix Korea is having a lot of success, and the US wants to capitalize on it because we're a big melting pot country. So there's that.
Also Filipino dramas too, like if you can tell, like there's like so many Filipinos, some ABS-CBN, and like if I want to pitch a story about Filipino, like then like it's possible I can pitch it.
It's possible, yeah, it's possible to do that. I wouldn't say go to the country to do it, but I'm sure Netflix or any other place might consider it because of the demographics that they've been reaching. So there's that. Continue on, Fernando, please.
Just to add on the whole thing and confusion of like structures and like how you were saying how it really depends who you're pitching to, just in general, like on a life level as a writer, who you pitch to or who you talk to or who you tell your ideas is always going to depend, because you are, I think, like at the end of the day, maybe an individual talking to another individual or speaking to a very specific set of individuals, and everyone's bringing their own personal life experiences to the room. So the way they receive your idea is going to be like it's just going to be entirely subjective. So you kind of have to know how to read the room and know who you're pitching to and what they're going to expect from you. That's why structures like this works, because it's a little universal and people will understand it better. And once you are established and are a professional, then that's, I mean, most like as a screenwriter, we know that there's all these rules, and then you read like, let's say Quentin Tarantino's, and then his structure is ass, and that's because he can do that because he's established, and you can break the rules when you're established and people want to give you money. So that's why we're kind of like still talking a lot about these very specific structures for now, and then later in your career you will understand when to and when not to follow these things, and like what other ones you can use and what you may be good at using. So yeah. So yeah, you want to explain your potential episodes. You want to kind of like in Natasha's V's episodic screenwriting I'm taking right now, like for a show Bible, it's kind of the same. I'm assuming for a pitch deck is you want to have kind of like your log lines ready for the rest of your episodes, and you want to have like right here it says short paragraphs, so kind of like a fleshed out idea or treatment of what's going to happen in these minor episodes and how these episodes drive each other or how they go along together to create the overall season's arc. Okay, and then this one, just again, this could be very specific to what Netflix expects, but this one here says minor goals make great stories for your episodes because success is required for your hero to move forward in the larger season story. High stakes are always good. Try to keep them to half a page or less. It's like detailed but concise. And that's the end.
So yeah, go create. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Because a lot of this, and you can ask me or Fernanda or Hannah about any of this, because I mean, we might not be experts on it, but we can take away from what we know and what we've watched. We can see what kind of patterns, like maybe the best way to go about pitching would go. I don't know if you have any questions. Question?
In the beginning, like what you guys talk about in the beginning.
Honestly, it was a lot more about if you've taken a screenwriting course or like short storytelling, it kind of goes into that idea of I don't know if you can bring it up, Hannah, just scroll up super quickly. It kind of just goes over like 7 things about what you should what you should have in a pitch. It's right there, pitch document. The story, overview, world, tone, this character descriptions, season summaries, and potential episodes if you're doing TV. So that's what we kind of went over. If you know about story, then you will already be familiar. I think the pitch deck does this because some people might have, they might forget. And a lot of early writers, like myself, I've done this mistake too about I tend to kind of go overboard with an idea, and maybe it's too complex, or it's not very well made because I'm not at that level yet where I can completely have my ideas written down on paper. So this is just a good way to remind you of the basics of what you should have in a story, but also a lot of what people look for when you're pitching. So like if I'm gonna pitch, like I did last week, if I'm going to pitch that, I gotta talk about who my characters are, where they are at, what's the tone, and what's gonna happen basically. So yeah.
Is it having a character bio, right? Like a
Character bio, yeah. You want to write a character bio, yeah. And I think who mentioned it? Was it about the therapy session? Was it you? I don't know, Fernanda or Hannah?
Yeah, that was me. I would
Okay.
just basically said you have to like you should know your characters so well that you should be able to write a therapy session for them. Like you need to know who you're writing about.
I take it that's from Natasha V, because I have a class with her too. So she's told me the same thing about that stuff. Yeah. So that's very important. Take it from any professor that you have, and they tell you that, take it to heart because it becomes really important and handy. That's a good question. Anyone else have a question or any comments at all, or want to discuss about the future or world of pitching besides?
If you do want access to these slides, I will send out another email. If Zoom people, if you're not on the emailing list, put it in the chat or put your email in the chat. And Amber, if you could take those down. I'm pretty sure I have everyone's email here, and I will send out the slides in our updated email this week.
I actually have a question. Well, besides the people I guess who pitched, does anyone else have any ideas that have been like in there that they have been like maybe hesitant on maybe pitching to someone or talking to someone? Does anyone have any of that stuff? I don't know. Do you two know?
That's like I don't.
Okay. Anyone else? Or type in the chat too, because I think it's what's really important is maybe I do this sometimes where when I have something, I try to tell myself, let's say I'm like an exec. This could be subjective, but like how would I pitch it to myself, or I'm the person trying to pitch myself. Would I be interested in this? Because if you pitch something, but then you think to yourself, oh man, I'm not even interested in it, and you just pitched it to someone, like, well, then like it's not even gonna be like, you're not even gonna be interested. Yeah, you won't even be interested in stuff. So before you even maybe pitch, you should think to yourself, and this happens, so I can't blame anybody if you're writing or something. Be careful and choose what you love and then pitch it, because otherwise everyone changes and you'll think maybe I shouldn't have pitched that idea, but then someone loves it and then you're like, well, oh crap, well, I don't love this. So, and you don't want to say no, because then they're like, well, you just lost a whole sum of money. Money makes the world go round. So yeah, that's all I have to say on the matter. Anyone else want to say anything?
Yeah, so I was thinking about like some Hollywood, like Netflix are coming over here, like the link talking about Netflix and stuff. So like somebody here works for Netflix then, or like how do you guys get access? Like
we got this slide from Jessica Payne, who was the founder of 3. She joined us in one of our first meetings and showed us this the slideshow and was able to send it to us. It was off of a workshop that she went to. So just making connections with us, with alumni, with
a lot of other people in film, you'll be able to get this things like these slides and stuff.
Also, they were like the Netflix is like pitching their own stories. Is they are they like Netflix now? Are they like
No. She just went to a workshop that sent them this slideshow.
nice.
I would encourage seeking out seminars and stuff too about this stuff, or for any of that matter. Try to do that. You'd be surprised. I thought it would be boring when I went because I'm on Zoom, but it turned out to be interesting when I went to Brian Konietzko's one because it's about a series I love, and you get a bit of history about what it. I also learned a tidbit. If anyone loves Adventure Time or has watched it, does anyone know the story of how? Does anyone know the pitch story about that one? No, apparently. So he pitched it to Cartoon Network by doing the theme song and doing the whole, saying the whole entire premise with the ukulele. Yeah, Hannah knows that one. I was also told by Brian that don't be that guy too, because that's super, that's super outlandish. If you believe in it, I mean, if you're that type of personality, go for it. There's a certain art to pitching because it's almost just like public speaking about talking to a whole group of people and just telling them your idea and why you love it and why they should love it too. So in that sense, I guess when he pitched it, that creator, I guess he had a certain approach to it. So if you have a distinct approach that you want to go for, you should take it. Otherwise, the formula of pitching will always remain the same, and you can still use it, and it will still work. So there you go.
I would definitely remind, like I said in the last meeting that we were discussing this, when I took my documentary film course last year, we did practice pitching and also observed our professor doing a pitch, an IRL pitch. You're selling yourself as well, and you need to make sure that you're letting them know not just why your project is amazing, but why you are the right person to make it, and are going to be an amazing asset for that, because they can find someone else to tell a similar story that meets the desires of people to hear that kind of story. But you need to tell them why you and your particular version of the story are going to succeed at telling it, why, what your secret sauce is that makes you the right person to tell it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
I 100% agree. I feel like when you're doing these kinds of things, there are a lot of things at stake. Like, it's not just, like Joey mentioned, like, it's not just convincing them that they want to give you money. It's them convincing them why they should give you specifically money, and like not just why they should find it interesting, but if there really is an audience out there for it. Because like, I don't know, like let's say for Adventure Time and regular show, like Cartoon Network is kind of for like kids, but like I'm 22 and I'd still watch regular show before bed, maybe with a joint now, but like I'm still gonna watch it. Like, you just have to convince them that there are people out there who want good things too, not just why they should give you money.
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool. If there are, oh, go ahead.
I was thinking, what about pitching for like a Filipino television show? I know like there's like various like movies like from ABS-CBN. Like if you like notice it on Netflix, they have like ABS-CBN and like Hollywood. So like, what do you guys think of like collaboration from like different countries? Is like if I were to pitch in at Netflix and I showed them like, oh, this is the story that I wanted. Like, is the audience is like non-Filipino audience, would they be interested? Because like, what about the language barriers that we have,
Well, I think something that is always what's great about currently is that you talk about language barrier, but subtitles, and there's people who do that job for you. So there's the language barrier already kind of thrown out the window, unless maybe someone doesn't actually know how to do their subtitle jobs, or they like to dub, which is the worst thing ever. Again, in terms of if you're thinking about pitching and you want your intended audience is, let's say, Filipino, but you might think that if you're pitching it to the US Netflix, they're like, well, why would we take that when our audience is majority of this? I think earlier I mentioned it depends on who you talk to. Maybe they are not risky, or they don't really want to pay attention to the core audience and think it's just straight white males that only watch Netflix, and they will probably deny it. Otherwise, though, I think a lot of people who you're pitching to will see the value of finding other audiences out there. And to you specifically about if you're thinking about collaborating, and it's with different cultures. I'm sure the social media age has spread around so much, can spread around so much news about a show that it might take off or it might not take off. It depends on this. This is usually after when you pitch, and maybe they do pick it up. But I think it really all depends on the outreach of it and what the quality of it is, because you don't want to forget about quality. And you might be past the pitching part, but if your quality, the quality of the thing you're making isn't on par with what you thought it would be, or it's like, then it might not take off, or it might not be good at all on it, the reality. So I hope that kind of answers it. It does. Cool.
Because there's like I recently like a new Filipino show where they collaborate with Hollywood. So it's on Netflix. I forget the name of the title, but it's like a Filipino mixed with like Hollywood actors. And so, but they're like in some half of it it's in English and half of it it's in Tagalog. And like the one in Tagalog, they kind of like have subtitles on it. So like I guess that's possible, like having like, since there's so many Filipinos in the city, and like,
Oh yeah.
and I was thinking of like maybe if Netflix was in Daly City, there would be collaboration within the TFC, which is the Filipino channel.
Oh yeah. That goes into more depth about, I think, the industry in the Philippines as a whole. But I guess to put it simply, I think I mentioned it. It just kind of depends on what kind of outreach it'll have, and what kind of potential outreach when you pitch it. So there you go. Kind of a difficult question. I wish we had someone else who knew more about it, but I appreciate the challenge about it, because I was trying to figure out like what logistically it would be. So it's good.
Sabine, yeah.
Okay, so can you use your own drawings in your pitch deck as well?
Absolutely. I mean, Brian Konietzko used like sketch drawings of Aang that weren't really fleshed out, but they worked. And if it's compelling enough, I mean, the artists will probably, the people who they gave those guys a team, so they know what they were going to do, right? So as long as you have a rough sketch of what you have, it's also interesting because a lot of people like to see the creative process when you're making a show or something. So please use your own artwork, of course. It might not be the prettiest, but at least it's something. Then show don't tell, right? Show them at least that.
I have, I always keep a sketchbook nearby. I'm always drawing. So that gives me great encouragement.
Yeah, use what you got.
Like my own ideas and my own shows.
Exactly. Use what you got. If you drew a logo or something, put that in the front of it. Be like, this is it, and then you pitch your idea. This is what my show's about. Show those character drawings and concept art or what you want, and they'll see what you want to see. And maybe they'll like it so much that they're like, we love this, and we're gonna pick it up. And they'll do their damn best job to recreate it because they like it. And yeah, Joey, I agree. Yeah, it's not, pitch decks sometimes are misleading, in which they have these awesome promo shots with like this incredible like detailed graphics and stuff, but no one's gonna have that ready, and no one really wants to. It's never going to be like that, because the elevator pitch itself is an elevator and you're just kind of talking. So there's also that consideration you got to take into consideration. You're never going to find you're never going to find like a solid time. Maybe you'll have an appointment, but who really sets up appointments with like Netflix executive, for example? Like, you're never going to do that. They're going to probably be like, hey, you want to meet at a cafe tomorrow at 8 a.m. Show me your idea. And you'd be like, oh, sure. You got to scramble. You got to find an idea real quickly. Or if you're like someone who's been trying to pitch the idea so far, and then some guy in like Nickelodeon is like, hey, these guys want to meet you and they want to see your idea. Can you get a presentation ready in like 2 days? And then you're like, oh, sure. And then you gotta keep going. So yeah, they're never gonna look professional. They're never gonna look the way you want, but have something there, and then you'll convince them.
Cool. Well, we're at our time. Other questions and comments, feel free to send them to the F3 email. I will also send out Paolo's email in the newsletter with the slides. Again, use F3 as a resource if you ever have questions and stuff. That's what we're here for. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
You.
Appreciate seeing all you guys again. It was awesome. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I think we brought a lot of stuff too. No, I don't know. I thought I was gonna do something, but
Is the cinema collective, are you making tomorrow virtually or?
it's both. We're gonna stream it. We're gonna stream it and also.
I'm talking to the group. I'm not talking about you specifically, but I'll miss you guys, okay?
Okay,
I always do. Sorry, I'm awkward. but, you know.
you're fine. I'm so glad you can come.
Yay.
We'll have it in like just.
Bye.
Bye.
Would that be live?